Hey there, internet friends, and welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me this week we have Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cam?
Good. Trevor,
Yeah.
it's time to open up a very special cold one.
Don't explode it over everything today. Okay.
Did not explode this time.
Cool. Today we're the very special episode that Cameron is alluding to is today's episode is going to be all about the Snyder Cut, aka Zack Snyder's Justice League. Both of us have sat down and watched it now. I had watched it kind of like in the day that it launched, basically in two parts. Cam watched it in two parts a couple days later, I think.
Yeah.
So we
Like a
couldn't
day
do
or
it.
two later.
Yeah, we couldn't do it last week, but we're diving in this week. So yeah, we're gonna just kind of dive into that. But before we do, a little bit of housekeeping for you. If you like what you hear, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, and share the podcast everywhere you can with all your friends and all that fun stuff. And if you're feeling extra generous, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. Just like all of our wonderful Patreon producers. If you support us on Patreon at the $1 or above level, you will get a bonus early access monthly episode of this very show, where you basically get a whole month before we release it to the public. This upcoming month, that'll go live here in a couple days, Logan and I sat down and recorded yesterday. It was a fun episode talking about the TV shows we grew up with. Spoilers, there's lots of love in there for stuff like Boy Meets World, a whole bunch of Nickelodeon shows, Saturday morning cartoons, all sorts of fun stuff from the 90s, early aughts, I would say. So yeah, you can check that out. So yeah, let's just dive right on in there, Cam. Topic of the show, Zack Snyder's Justice League Spoilercast. And you and I met up briefly last night for a quick little kind of socially distanced dinner / I handed off your new PS5, since I have become the master at securing PlayStation 5s for the That Nerdy Site team. And you mentioned that you did not watch the original Justice League. You did not watch the
Nope.
Joss Whedon cut.
Nope.
So
I heard it was really, really bad, and is also around the same time that some stuff about Joss Whedon had come out, and also I was just so, and it wasn't just DC stuff. I was like super done with like superhero films for a while, because I don't recall, was Justice League before or after Endgame?
Justice League would have been before Endgame. I mean, Justice League was before Infinity War.
Was it? Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Because I remember before, pre-Infinity War, between that and Captain America: Civil War, I was pretty much just like, I am not making an effort to see these superhero films anymore. I caught Ant-Man and the Wasp on a plane coming back from PAX in the year that the year after it came out. I was just very much just done. I was just put out by just how numerous it was. Treating these superhero films like just regular films at that point was just, the kind of thing. And unless there was I had a strong attachment to the franchise, I went out and saw Black Panther, of course. Loved it. Saw it 3 times in theaters. Still one of my favorite Marvel films. But unless there was something to that level and that caliber, I really wasn't going into it making a priority of seeing these films. Also, I was a broke college kid, so
Fair.
yeah.
So what did you think of Zack Snyder's Justice League then? The 4-hour, 2-minute cut.
It felt like reading the first 12 issues of a Justice League comic book.
Okay.
And when I say that, I mean it in the best way possible, but also in the worst way possible. I do not think there's anybody better at taking what are pivotal big comic book moments, not that exist, but just the concept of them, and putting them on the screen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Snyder is long kind of recognized as a lot of his visual style is basically storyboards brought to life.
Yeah.
But most notably, I would say in Watchmen, the the amount of iconic images from the Watchmen graphic novel that you see like played out on the big screen in his version were one of the like best and worst things of that movie. I think is like a lot of people were like, it's really cool how faithful he was to it, but also like he was too faithful to it.
And then in a lot of other ways he wasn't faithful at all to it, which I think is kind of the like Zack Snyder for me is a complete example of like the prime example of a double-edged sword of somebody who like we talked a little bit about it last night, but this is not a man who understands nuance. This is not a man who understands subtext. Like it is very much like surface level of you get what you get, like, and he will beat you over the head with it. And like that's just something I expected out of the Snyder cut. So going into it, I expected it to be a somewhat like okay trash fire, and what I got out of it instead was a pretty much a solid 7 out of 8, like 7 to 8 out of 10 comic book brought into film. I don't think it's really fair, even if I had seen the original cut of the Justice League, to like compare them too much, because comparing a 2-hour film to a 4.5-hour experience is just totally different. But I also think that like there's a lot that goes into why this is a unique situation between the fan campaign, like between that and also like the tragic circumstances of Zack Snyder leaving.
Yeah.
But also it turning out that like when before those like that tragedy in their family's life happened, like Warner Brothers was trying to figure out a way to fire him anyway.
I mean, that's all speculation, and
yeah, that's all. That's what 90% of the backstory of
yeah.
the Justice League film is speculation. But yeah, there's a lot about this film that I think works super well. I think as a comic book fan, like a longtime DC comic book fan, the use of, but the biggest thing that I took away from it was, I can't believe that this film didn't have Darkseid in it originally.
Yeah, it's. I mean,
like Steppenwolf's Steppenwolf without it is such a whatever villain. Like it makes like why even have Steppenwolf at all if you're not going to have Darkseid, if you're not going to have Apocalypse. And so the fact that not only did we get like Darkseid, but we got Desaad and Granny Goodness making like Desaad having speaking parts and Granny Goodness making a cameo was just like that DC fanboy part of me, because I'm not necessarily a fanboy, but like as somebody who's a longtime DC fan, it very much was like a moment of, wow, I'm actually seeing like these iconic non-mainstream. Like Darkseid's pretty mainstream, but even then he's not super well known. It's thinking of Thanos before they made Thanos the big bad guy in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, I mean, I would liken it to, on the DC side of things, like I feel like everybody knows Batman's rogues gallery, but like Superman, The Flash, Wonder Woman, like those are a lot less like mainstream knowledge. Like apart from like Lex Luthor in Superman, like I don't know a ton of his. Although I do, given that I am a huge fan of Star Kid's Holy Musical Batman, that was where I got introduced to the concept of Mr. Mixelpix, whatever, like however you say that name. And I was thinking, like the only way I would want to see Restore the Snyderverse like utilized is if that is the villain for Superman in the next one. Is give me Zack Snyder having to deal with Mr. Mixelpix, Mr. Mitzpitlik, blah, 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 whatever.
It right. The thing about Mixelpix is that he's not necessarily even a bad guy.
He is like one of his rogues or whatever. So that's like we don't even need to dive down. That is purely a joke. I'm just saying like that's
he's a pretty solid adversary for sure.
Darkseid is a name I'd heard. Granny Goodness I never would have known about until the DC Harley Quinn show, and even there, like, she's in like an episode or two. Like they go to Darkseid to get parademons to take over Gotham or something like that. And in order to do that, they have to beat Granny Goodness, I believe. But even there, like I don't think I knew her name was Granny Goodness necessarily or something it's weird that Harley's fighting this Granny character or something like that.
Oh,
So
dude, it's so Granny Goodness is such a badass. I
yeah.
love her so much.
And certainly in the
Yeah,
lens of Harley Quinn, which is just a balls to the wall, like, super hard R
wild.
kind of
Yeah,
rated show. um,
yeah. Granny Goodness is a mean old bitch.
yeah.
Like I love Granny Goodness as a character and a concept. However, I don't think anything will be better than her portrayal in the Adventures of Superman, the
Hmm.
animated show on WB back in the day. Granny Goodness in that show is very much a like Ursula sounding, deep voiced like character that just plays into this just awesome experience with her. She's great. I love Granny Goodness, love Desaad. I even like Steppenwolf. Steppenwolf's like my least favorite of the Apocalypse crew,
Hmm.
but even then he's really interesting and well known. Um,
Desaad for me, like the thing I couldn't get over with Desaad in this is because yeah, Desaad, Granny Goodness, Darkseid, not in the original cut. And so
Wild,
Desaad,
just wild. What's the point of the Mother Box? Why is he trying to do the Unity with them
I mean,
then?
he's still trying to take over the world. It's just not taking it over in the name of Darkseid, or at least like it's not presented in the name of Darkseid.
So he's just some random like space conqueror dude in the original film.
Pretty much, yeah. Like because
Oh my gosh, that sucks.
in the original, the whole Age of Heroes sequence isn't them fighting against Darkseid; it's them fighting against Steppenwolf.
Against
And so
Steppenwolf, I remember
Steppenwolf,
hearing about that.
yeah, so Steppenwolf was the one that came to conquer the world all those years ago. The anti-life equation isn't in there, isn't anywhere to be found in there. But like
What the heck?
he
That's
was
so
presented
dumb.
as strong enough that like all of the forces of the world had to come together to defeat him.
For Steppenwolf.
I mean,
Ugh.
like, sure, say that, but like, Darkseid gets taken out like a bitch in this. So, like, I think Darkseid
Dude, he
actually
does
ends up
not get. What are you talking about? Darkseid fights and kills a Green
he kills a
Lantern.
Green Lantern, fine, but he gets taken out by Ares' axe, right? So
No, after getting blasted by like
by
continuously
Zeus,
by Zeus's thunder,
yeah.
and also fighting off all those like the Age of Heroes is nothing to like I remember hearing something about that like on the Kind of Funny in review about it. They're like
Hmm.
got taken out like a bitch. It's like first off, Ares in his Ares is we know like a really strong character
But
in the fact that he killed the other gods, and
but
then on
Wonder
top of
Woman
that,
took out Ares, so then it should make sense that like Wonder Woman could take out Darkseid. That like
but
the
Ares didn't do
level
it by
of
himself. He like this is the reason why they beat Darkseid is because they all came together. That was the point.
Mhm.
And so you had a Green Lantern, you had a like the Guardian. I love that they're like a guardian from a guardian from the stars. They call them. I'm like I love that.
yeah.
So good. You had these like you had Amazonians, you had uh, Atlanteans
Yeah.
before pre-sunken city, and then you also had like the ancient kings of men and like the ancient men who are like canonically like stronger than modern day men
Hmm.
because they had like old blood in them. Uh, like so you have like these massive superpowers all come together, very much like the AKA the Justice League. Um, and it's like very unique and special about it that and like
So
so like
all I will
it's
say
important
is
to note.
if you're going to give this much weight to Darkseid, then that's the weight you would have to give to Steppenwolf in the first movie because that's like he's treated pretty
Okay,
much the
yeah,
same
sure.
way. Um,
That's wild. That's like a comic book fan because Steppenwolf is kind of like the like in the I don't know if that's Desaad or Steppenwolf in the animated series. I don't remember. If it's Steppenwolf, like Steppenwolf is like a goober in the animated show.
mhm.
Um, but it's wild though. Like thinking about it.
But
But no,
yeah,
so
like
they set up Steppenwolf as like that big bad of a boss. Okay,
yeah,
all right.
and basically that's as far as it like gets presented in the first one is that he's not doing it on behalf of Darkseid. He's doing it to take over the world himself. And it might have been set up in a future movie, a future like post Whedon Justice League that had that movie done well or anything. That like it would have been like retconned into he was doing it all for Darkseid and Apocalypse or whatever. But yeah, the other element that I was going to mention with Desaad is it's very like I look at Desaad in this, and all I see is T.J. Miller's character from Ready Player One.
Oh,
They have like almost identical designs with the exception of like TJ
yeah.
Miller's like character has like a big skull chest piece or whatever in his as his avatar character or something. But like they have like the same facial design. So I'm just like am I supposed to now think that like TJ Miller in Ready Player One is like his avatar is based on Zack Snyder's Justice League Desaad? Because that's now the headcanon that goes on in my head. Because he
Hey,
just like he looks like that, and he looks like just one of the goobers of Thanos in Infinity War
yeah,
and
Infinity War,
Endgame.
yeah.
I don't remember which one. Like
Yeah.
one of the ones that I don't remember the name of, basically. But yeah, it's like that's one of the obviously one of the big key differences. And then there are really like two other like scenes that really come to mind that were in the Joss Whedon version that aren't in this version. But other than that, like you say, it's really hard to compare the two. Like for me, I was blown away by how similar, how much of Zack Snyder's Justice League was in the original cut. Like the I watched it. I want to say like parts 1 through 3, like on my first night viewing, and then parts 4 through 6 in the epilogue on part 2. And I remember thinking like when I got to the end of that, I was like, God, I feel like there's barely been any like notable changes, with the exception of like a lot of Zack Snyderisms, kind of like like the music cues that he throws in there, and then like there are a few notable scenes that are in. I mean, there are more notable scenes that are in this that weren't in the original, i.e., the Flash sequence with Iris was never in the original. The extended kind of introduction to Cyborg's character wasn't in the original.
Yeah, I
So
remember reading about that. Like
yeah,
Cyborg's characterization got like sidelined really heavy.
yeah. So yeah, like I mean, the characters that benefit the most from the extended cut are Flash, Cyborg, and Steppenwolf, because they actually have like a little bit of like depth behind them. But as you kind of mentioned, like Zack Snyder's not great with depth, so it's all
No,
very
yeah.
surface level. But it's more so that like scenes that were 5 minutes in the Whedon version are 10 to 15 minutes in this version or something like that. Like the Themyscira
Yep.
sequence at the beginning, like the thing falling into the sea and this like moment of mourning all the Amazons or whatever, not in there. It's like they get the box out and then Steppenwolf immediately breaks out and chases it. And so the action just keeps moving. That was a much more like action heavy kind
Huh.
of
Okay.
set piece in the original that didn't have all these like long drawn out moments that the Snyder version had. And it's that kind of stuff. And I was rewatching the tail end of it right before we started recording, so stuff was like fresh in my mind. And the thing that like jumps out at me is Zack Snyder doing his old Zack Snyder thing of like really loving slow motion makes
Yeah.
the moments where slow motion could be really cool and impactful, like any of the Flash scenes where he's going into like super speed, or when Diana or Superman go into super speed, and so like time slows around them. Because Zack Snyder's over reliance on slow motion for normal moments, those end up losing their impact and having just less like meaning to them. And it's like and also artificially stretches out this movie in a way that I don't think it needed to.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Definitely, there's too much slow mo for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, at the same time, though, like it's difficult because that's kind of like what I expected going into a Snyder cut of a film. Is like if it's just him unadulterated, I'm surprised half the film isn't in slow mo.
Oh, I mean, like, yeah, I'm not surprised by it. It's more like this is why I don't think this is a good movie.
Oh, for sure.
Is that like it's 4 hours when it could have been 3 or something like that if he had taken out it, like if he had like. So the story goes that like executives insisted on a 2-hour cut, and that was why Joss Whedon cut out a whole bunch of stuff and story
Yeah.
arcs and stuff like that, to get it down to under 2 hours. But like the flip end of Zack Whedon doing a 4 hour cut is like nobody was saying no to him. So it is he
Yeah.
is
It's
unadulterated.
unfiltered.
It is George Lucas on the prequels. Nobody says no. Nobody like points out, hey, maybe this is a bad idea, or maybe you can edit some of this stuff down. And so we get a whole bunch of stuff that just doesn't help the movie. It's just Zach thinking something is cool or something. And it's like, because obviously I don't want to question his like artistic decisions or whatever, because he's clearly making these decisions because he has a reason for them. I just don't like, it's not conveyed to me as an audience member of like why we need this Icelandic song sequence featuring like shirt sniffing or whatever. You still there? Oh,
Yep, I'm still here. Sorry, I'm just trying to fix something.
okay.
We're good. I can still hear you. No worries.
Okay. Yeah, it just because the Discord, like, since you switched camera off, it switched us in the position on the video. So I'm now under the.
Oh, sorry. I'll be in just a moment. Sorry.
Cool, no worries. It's just now I'm under Cameron and your Law and Order picture is under me. But yeah, I
No, I
just
hear
don't.
you on that. I definitely hear
Yeah.
you on that.
It's frustrating
Yeah.
seeing
Mhm.
like sequences. I'm just like, I don't know what this adds to the movie. It doesn't add anything to the movie
Yeah.
for me. I don't know what it adds for anybody. Seeing sequence it like just like the most egregious and easy one to kind of I think point out and make fun of is the like Aquaman going into the sea and just this extended sequence of people singing about him and then picking up his shirt and
Yeah.
sniffing it and
Well,
stuff like that. It's just like, what? Why was this a thing? Why did you not cut 5 minutes ago?
listen, I asked that question when I saw it. I was like, why is she sniffing his sweater? And I was watching it with my brother-in-law and my sister. My sister said because it's Jason Momoa.
Mm-hmm.
And if I saw Jason Momoa take off the sweater and leave it, I'd pick it up and sniff it.
Yeah, I think we
And I'm
joked like
to be honest, yeah,
that was like, oh, that wasn't meant to be in the movie. That was just this woman, the actress, like doing that after like they said cut, but they kept rolling, and so they were like, all
yeah.
right, we'll just keep it in the movie.
Pretty much like that's my theory on it. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense.
I mean, like I
Yeah,
like in that degree, like I can justify it in terms of like there is such a reverence for this god character that has come and saved them that like that's something to be cherished. That is an artifact of his. So fine, it just feels weird and out of place in a movie of this kind of like scale and grandeur.
I agree. Um, no, 100%. I think that's a great example of it. I don't know if it's like this film could have been like like incredibly significantly shorter, but I definitely think they could have saved probably about 5 to 10 minutes on it because of that. But that being said, I think I look at this film and I think of it as a 7 or 8 comic book come to life in a 4+ hour experience, that has kind of left me like I'm very much interested in it. I very much enjoyed myself with it. I do not think that it worked. Like, I don't think you can possibly even conceivably call this a film.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it's at this point it's somewhat ludicrous to consider it a film. But I will say that I enjoyed my time with it. But will I go back and watch it again? Probably not. I went through and watched some of the clips that I liked from it. I have to say, like, one scene that I really, really enjoy, and I understand why people think it's creepy or weird, but it is that Barry Allen Iris West scene. Because as somebody who is a long time, not just comic book, but also like the television show The Flash,
Mm-hmm.
all this stuff, like I'm a long time. I'm not a massive Flash fan. I couldn't name you like more than like, I don't know, 2 or 3 of his villains, but seeing a moment where it's there's a song that's based off of Barry Allen by somebody that I like got on a random like shuffle on Spotify at one point, and I really liked it. I wish I remembered what it was called, but it's like this idea of this character whose life goes so fast, whose life, like, he doesn't ever have like more than a moment before like he has to do something, and like something heroic, because he does have that scale to his power. But to have a really nice sentimental moment between Barry and Iris, even though people aren't fully comprehending their, like, they just see Barry be creepy to a girl.
Mm-hmm.
They don't understand that this is a woman that Barry will literally in the future bend the rules of space and time to try to like save on multiple occasions.
Yeah.
This is a woman who,
I mean, like that's the
replaces
problem,
his mother
really,
as the most
though.
important person.
At this is like you're bringing that much weight into it, and there is that much weight to the characters, but that has not at all been established in this universe or anything like that. So,
And no,
so this is just like
should it
a
be at that
creepy
point.
meet cute, basically, between these two characters.
It's a guy who, like, here's the thing: the moment he bumps into Iris, you can tell he is just, it's love at first sight. He is just enamored in that moment. I think Ezra Miller pulls off this, hey, I'm just like this like dorky, quirky, kind of annoying guy who, like, I know that I'm annoying, and I don't mean to be annoying, but I am annoying, because I think we've all, like, everybody's like, oh, it's so cringe and whatnot, but I think everybody's had those moments in their life where they're just like, I'm not trying to be annoying, but I'm kind of being just super annoying right now. And I think that's just part of Barry. For me, that's part of this Barry's charm with Ezra Miller, is that he's not supposed to be the cool. Like, the Flash is dorky. He is like, he's just like, he's not just he's not just comic relief. He's not just the funny guy. Like, there is a level to the Barry Allen mythos that is this awkward guy who, when he puts on the mask, he becomes more confident. Things like that happen. But who he is as a person is kind of this goofy guy, but that's also who, like, Iris falls in love with. But I digress. Back to that original point that I was making. That moment was definitely a play for fans, because it was definitely like longtime Flash fans, because it's just like, it is a very, and this is why it's creepy for some people, and I understand why it's creepy for some people because of this. It's in a very oddly intimate moment between two people that don't know each other.
Yeah. And it's one-sided intimacy, because all of this is happening way too fast for Iris to be registering any of it. So it's like, if it wasn't beats in that sequence, like Barry like moving her hair, or like softly, like so gently kind of laying her down and stuff, if those two things really were cut out, I think it would have just been like you wouldn't see nearly as much like comments about it on the internet. But like those moments are what just kind of make it extra weird.
It's the hair. For me, the being gentle about laying her down fits with the with, I think that's how Barry treats
like,
most people.
He definitely needs to do that, but it's like it's twice as long as it needs to happen, is what I would say.
Yeah, well, it's also after the hair thing, so everything after the hair thing takes on a different context.
Yeah.
The hair thing, though, is like, that's such an intimate thing to be doing, like, so intimate. And, like, you don't know her, but, like, you can already, like, it's easy to tell Barry's already in love. Like, they're, like, Barry Allen and Iris West's entire thing is that, like, they, like, in the, like, more recent comics versus the television show on CW, where they've known each other since childhood. But even then, he still
CW was a little weird, because it was like they were adopted siblings. I was like, oh, that adds an extra weird, uncomfortable layer to this.
But it's like, he tells her, like, that he's been in love with her since the first day he saw her. Like, that is part of the mythos of these two characters, is that for Barry it was love at first sight. And so they are true to that. They play it in a way that, like, gets way too intimate, way too quickly for these two characters who just met. And Barry's in the middle of saving her life, and which is like a moment where she does not have autonomy, and she does not have a way of, like, dealing with this, like, you know, kind of cringy, creepy thing that he's doing. But I also feel that that plays into the world of Barry Allen, is that world where everything else is so slow around him. And you kind of get a feeling for that I really enjoyed in this film, But I think that is a prime example of Joss, or not Joss, but Zack Schneider not
You
really
always say
getting.
Schneider, and I just want to point out he does not have like the SCH in his name. It is
I'm fully
SNY.
aware.
Okay.
I know it's
It is not Schneider,
Snyder.
is what I would say. Is
It's
you are
I know it's Snyder.
so you are
I know
deliberately
it's
saying his
Snyder.
name wrong. Okay, got it.
No, I'm not deliberately saying it wrong. That's just the way that I normally pronounce Snyder is Schneider.
But it's not Schneider. It's Snyder.
It's a vocal.
It
It's a
is.
vocal thing for me. I'm
So
sorry.
so say the words. Say the Dudley Do Right villain Snidely Whiplash.
Schneidly Whiplash.
You dumbass.
I'm sorry, dude. Ask me to say what is the safe word that Michael Scott uses in The Office?
I don't know. I don't.
It's foliage, but I don't pronounce it correctly.
I didn't know that. Like I did. I certainly did not know The Office that well to know his safe word was what, foliage.
Yes, there
Okay.
it is.
Yeah.
I can't pronounce that word correctly.
Okay.
Um,
So
here's
you're
the thing.
you're
This
like
is-
you're
this
like
is-
George W. with nuclear versus nuclear.
Yes,
Okay.
which is it's a speech thing, and you shouldn't make fun of it. Okay.
I mean, I feel like I'm gonna keep making fun of it because you're saying his name wrong. But okay.
I
I at least
I'm
wanted
not
to.
trying to say
I
his
at
name
least
wrong.
wanted to address it because I heard you saying it last night when we were talking. And I was like, is he saying Schneider? Does he know it's not Rob Schneider?
I'm fully aware that he does not have a ch in his name,
Okay.
but it's just the way that when I pronounce the s and n together, it comes out.
All right.
I don't know what to tell you, man. All right, I don't know what to tell you. It's a verbal dissonance thing that like I don't understand. It fits into like there's a couple of words I can't say correctly.
All right.
Heaven knows I've tried. I've tried to work on it. It just doesn't work. It comes out foliage.
Anyway, back to like that awkwardness of the Flash aside, I really did appreciate. Like, I guess we didn't really dive into it, but like my overall take on this version is it's better than the original, certainly, and it gets like the benefit of extended sequences to help kind of flesh out some characters, but it also is completely overbloated and completely like overlong that I don't feel it needs to be. I feel like you could have cut a lot of this movie out, and you probably could have still told this story in a 2.5 hour movie that did not need to be 4 hours long. But I think like as I said, the characters that do really benefit from it are people like Flash, people like Cyborg, people like or enemies like Steppenwolf even. And the Flash sequence in particular that I really appreciated is the end sequence. And I bring this up to also just kind of fill you in. So obviously, like this was the originally intended sequence from Zack Snyder. So so you have Barry running around the outside while everybody else is kind of fighting in that core center area. And so when that whole narrative was taken out and it's not about Cyborg trying to like, I guess I think it is still about Cyborg trying to split apart the mother boxes, but it's not like there's no threat of like boom tubes and Darkseid coming in or something like that. It's just like, hey, if they come together, the world's going to end or something like that. And so they end up stopping Steppenwolf before any of that happens. And Barry is written out of the original ending by there being this random family in town that like the movie keeps coming back to throughout.
What?
Yeah. In that town outside the power plant. And Barry basically has to like save them, get them out of town. And so he's like, so they're all like in a car as you know, the power plant thing is like expanding or blowing up or something like that. They're getting in their car to flee the city because like parademons have been outside their house. Like it's a very weird sequence that just like it was one of the things that everybody made fun of in the first movie. Because
Just a random Russian family was there?
just a random Russian family hiding in their house from the parademons that are flying all around. And so they're finally like making the decision to like try and flee, and they get in their car and basically Flash like pushes their car out of the city and helps them escape. So that's what he's doing while Wonder Woman and Aquaman and Batman are all fighting inside. Batman isn't going around fighting off parademons and turrets and stuff. He's in the center of the action, fighting alongside Wonder Woman and Batman. And then Superman shows up, and instead of his line of like "not impressed," he has like a I'm a fan of truth, and I'm a pretty big fan of justice too, and like punches Steppenwolf or something. Like that was I think his line in the original, and
which I think sounded awesome. So
yeah, I thought it was a better line in the original than "not impressed," but he has like more action moments, I guess, in this version. And so that was the
he laser beams off Steppenwolf's horn, dude.
yeah, that was pretty intense.
Like that was
and
so
then,
rad.
And
like,
then they just
gosh.
completely fuck up Steppenwolf at the end.
Yeah. Oh, dude, when it's Aquaman and Superman and Wonder Woman just like tag teaming him, just like pounding him into the ground. Oh, it's so sick. It's such a good time.
Yeah, and Aquaman like spearing him, Superman punching him off the trident, and then Wonder Woman just like decapitating him as he goes back through the boom tube. It's like, oh,
so sick.
Shit, you guys really were like, yep, he's dead. But so in this
and then
version,
Darkseid crushes his skull.
Yeah. So
like,
in
gosh,
this version,
so cool.
I liked that Barry has this whole thing of he's running around to get the charge. That fails when he gets shot by the best possible shot parademon who would have been assassin class sniper or whatever.
Yeah, it's a matter of when there's that many parademons and they're all trying to shoot the Flash.
But like we only see that one, and we see him like perfectly time that shot.
Okay? I mean, sure.
In how it's presented.
I just assumed that he had been like dodging lasers left and right the entire time.
But yeah, so in that sequence, like even that like doesn't work, and he basically ends up having to manipulate time. Go faster than the speed of light from a like zero start kind of base,
which is nuts.
But
so cool.
like that sequence of like time reforming around him, I thought was a really cool sequence and really really great moment for him. So I appreciated like that. Obviously much better than like the original ending where he's just kind of out there saving this dumb family that we've had to like cut back and forth to throughout the movie. And then Cyborg also has a better ending because his arc has been set up throughout the movie now of like he doesn't see himself as a human, or he sees himself as broken, and finally gets that payoff moment of like, I'm not broken, and pulls the mother boxes apart and stuff. So like those two characters in particular get a great little showcase piece. And then as we touched on, like the fact that Steppenwolf here is a minion trying to redeem himself as opposed to a world conqueror trying to come back and like win now that Earth is weakened, is a more interesting take on the Steppenwolf character, but still not like a great take, I would say. Like he's still just kind of like, but as you're kind of describing him, he's always kind of like a booby character or something like that. So.
Yeah, he is like, I would say like B or C tier apocalypse villain.
Mm-hmm.
Like the A tier is always going to be your Granny Goodness, your Darkseid. I mean, the Granny Goodness is technically like a B tier apocalypse character anyway. She just has like a lot of like long-term responsibilities and has been around for forever. But when I look at Steppenwolf in this, I will say one thing I love that I looked at previous like stills and scenes that had been done.
Mm-hmm.
I much prefer the physical representation that Zack Snyder picked for Steppenwolf over the one that Joss Whedon did.
Yeah,
the armor
redesign
is like awesome.
Yeah, the redesign I think is super beneficial. And that's like that was really the thing that I like realized after watching it and being like, God, like I feel like so many of those scenes were the same scenes. Like, what did he do really with this cut apart from adding slow mo and decolorizing things or whatever? And it is like the realization of like, oh, every CG shot that had old Steppenwolf in it had to be redesigned. Let alone like the CG shots that were Steppenwolf in the original that are Darkseid in this and the Age of Heroes stuff. So yeah, I think, and I agree. I think he has a much more menacing look as opposed to the like weird, more humanoid version that we saw in the original. Um, and yeah, I prefer this version of Steppenwolf kind of in all aspects, I guess. But he's still like a character I don't really care too much about. But that's it.
Yeah.
It's definitely like, oh, that's where a ton of the budget went is in the it's the Sonic the Hedgehog redesign kind of thing.
Yeah.
Any other big highlights or things you wanted to kind of celebrate from this? Because it sounds like you liked it way more than I did.
Yeah, I think this is a solid, like, out of a viewing experience, I consider this like a 6 or a 7.
Okay, then you're not that far ahead of me because I would say like it's a 5 or 6 or something.
Yeah, let's think. I'm glowing about the things that I really love about it, but the things that you've mentioned that are not good about it I reinforce 100%. They are not good. Um, like, I do not need a bajillion Christ metaphors for Superman, and I don't need Batman to be his biggest evangelical
Yeah,
like pastor about it. Say, like, I don't need 2 scenes where Bruce yells "Faith, Alfred."
yeah.
Like,
That's
Batman's a believer now.
I
Batman's a believer.
Sure. Yeah, I
We're
mean
recording
that
this on
like
Sunday, so there you go.
there you go. That is one of my I think like ultimately I have never been a fan really of Zack Snyder's approach to these characters. Man of Steel was the one I probably liked the best of any of them.
Yeah.
And even that has like Superman is way too glum and gloomy to be, a symbol of hope like he says he is. And that whole like faith, Alfred, I'm going on faith, is just kind of like the epitome of like I don't think you understand what Batman is about. Like Batman is not a character who like puts all his money into faith. He is the world's greatest detective. He is logic. He is that element.
Well, it's the thing that Batman has faith in. Like, Batman does have faith, but he has faith in things like the human spirit and the goodness of the average person, and in the innocence of the public and of people. Like, Batman has faith, but he has faith in these concepts. He doesn't have like necessarily faith in a lot of people. And I will say that like believing in somebody and like in your heart, like knowing that they're going to be there for you no matter what, is much different than faith. Faith is like once again, faith is a subtle concept that it can take many forms and many shapes and many different narratives, but at its core, it is far more subtle and far more nuanced than what Zack Snyder is putting out here. Once again, the things I think Zack Snyder does well, this film is the epitome of those things. But the things he does poorly, it is also the epitome of these things. It is the truest double-edged sword I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Now, I feel this way. My brother-in-law who saw it says it's his favorite superhero thing he's ever seen.
That's a bold
Like,
that's a bold thing. And it, like
he
I saw
really
like
enjoys he really enjoys how different it was from everything else superhero, and from his perspective, I get it. This film is going to hit at different levels for different people.
yeah.
I
I mean,
like
Khalif Adams from Spawn on Me
yeah.
said a similar thing of like, whoever thought like Justice League would be better than the last 10 years of MCU movies. And I was like, I could not disagree with that more. But
this film is
whatever,
gonna
Khalif, you have your you have your belief.
This film, I think, because it is the way it's structured, it is so long. It is like set up in this way that with the different chapters and the epilogue and everything. I look at that and I see a film that I watched it with 2 other people. All 3 of us walked away feeling completely different things about it. And I see this film and I don't consider this film to be like quote unquote decisive. Like, it's not. I don't think this is going to be considered a divisive movie. I just think that people are going to land on it very differently, and like people are not going to be torn apart by their different opinions. I think people are like just going to be like, oh, you didn't like it as much as I did? Okay. Because this thing is just such a juggernaut of a media, gosh, I just almost called it a media file because of how massive it is. But like, it's just such a, it's because it's such an experience that it really is a, this is going to be weird. This is very much the epitome of art and film in a very weird, non-traditional way.
Mm-hmm.
People are going to walk into this with their own preconceptions. I didn't see the original. My brother-in-law and sister had seen the original. We all walked away with completely different feelings about it. My brother-in-law, who is a massive Joss Whedon fan, just thought the Whedon cut was just extremely inferior to this one, to the point where, like I mentioned, he thinks that this is the best superhero thing he's ever seen. I think it's so like this film. It feels wrong calling it just a film, but this experience is something that I think you can come in with any level of knowledge about DC that you have, seen the previous films, haven't seen the previous films, and you can get to this moment where where you have these really highlight moments that are very, very good, and then at the same time are very, very bad. The other moments, because the thing is, I don't feel like it's controversial. I think it's too exhausting to be controversial.
I mean, yeah, a lot of the stuff I've been saying since the original Justice League cut and the whole strategy behind DC's films slate in this is they were trying to come up with their Marvel's Avengers, but or their MCU Avengers, not the game Marvel's Avengers, but they took shortcuts to get there. Like,
yeah,
the Flash sequence and the Cyborg sequence that we get in this are poor substitutes for what should have been standalone films introducing and setting up those characters. The fact that they did Man of Steel, then they did Batman v Superman, and then they did Justice League would have been like if we had gotten Iron Man and Captain America and then just go straight into the Avengers with no Thor setup, no Incredible Hulk setup, no even Iron Man 2. Like, they just tried to like jumpstart the thing, and in a way that I don't think works. I mean, because we don't even get, like, we get Wonder Woman. I believe Wonder Woman's standalone film came between Batman v Superman and this, but she had been introduced backdoor pilot introduced in Batman v Superman in a way that didn't really feel right or weird. Like, it felt weird. And then the fact that the DC films have continued on, and we get a completely different Aquaman approach that spins off way more from the Joss Whedon film than this. Like, the fact that Mira is completely British in this is a weird thing that they still do the thing in this where they only talk in air bubbles that they do not do in Aquaman. And then you have Wonder Woman 1984 where that completely disrupts the timeline of things, is just weird stuff that that just feels out of place. What did you think in terms of because I want to say the biggest thing that was really new in this is the epilogue, the nightmare portion of the epilogue, because a whole bunch of the other stuff was in the previous cut, the setup for Slade Wilson and wasn't set up with Lex telling him his name's Bruce Wayne, but it was Lex Luthor was hiring Slade to go after Batman. And a couple of the other sequences there were in the original cut. So really the biggest new things here are Martian Manhunter finally getting shoehorned in, and then the nightmare sequence with Batman versus Jared Leto. What do you think about that sequence in particular?
I did not know how much I would enjoy Jared Leto's Joker from the moment he started interacting with Ben Affleck's Batman. It was so charged with just once again, coming from a comic book fan perspective, seeing in live action Joker taunt the death of Jason Todd at Batman just throwing in his face like an adopted son. Like Jared Leto, I feel like in Suicide Squad just did not nail the Joker at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's wild that in like the 8 minutes that he has on screen here in the Justice League cut of as Joker is better than a lot of portrayals of Joker. Definitely not the classic ones like Heath Ledger and Jack Nicholson. But I think like he does something very, very good, and then he makes a reach around joke, and it all comes crumbling apart for a split second. Who's gonna give you a reach around? It's like, first off, gross, disgusting. How dare you have the Joker say something that horrible? And then remember, it's Jared Leto's Justice League Joker, and I let it go.
You mean Suicide
no,
Squad
like,
Joker?
So it's in this one he's
Okay.
the Snyderverse version of Joker.
Gotcha.
Either way, I think that this is such a like Joker showing up there and being like taunting him like eventually like we're gonna turn on each other and it's like hold on to this card or whatever. Like it's just such a great like comic book panel type scene. And I think that's really where like my feeling about it comes down to is that entire scene is super comic booky, super cold opening for a comic book. Really, really good. Like really, really enjoyable as far as like getting to see a different kind of like world and enjoyment that they're encountering, or that we're encountering for it. In regards to, sorry, let me back up a bit here. I kind of like lost my thoughts for a moment. Brain dead.
I mean, I'll jump in and say like my thoughts on the sequence while you kind of like recollect yours are in the moment. It's a cool conversation. It's a cool edgy conversation.
Yes.
And then as soon as I think for a second about it, I'm thinking, or actually even like within the moment, I'm thinking, this is a cool conversation, but I would rather be seeing the things you guys are talking about. I would rather be seeing the death of Jason Todd and that sequence happening. I would rather be seeing the death of Harley Quinn and that sequence happening as opposed to you guys talking about these things in the past tense. And so it's the epitome of that, like, show me these things, don't tell me about these things.
Don't tell me about these things,
And when you couple that with like the presumed knowledge that you're telling me about things that we're never ever going to go back and see. Like we're never going to get those versions of events played out. Like even if the restore the Snyderverse happens, like
it's not.
We're never going to see that stuff play out like that.
No.
Like and if we did, they wouldn't live up to like the things that now have like that we've built in our own minds or something like that.
Exactly.
So that's like that's my gripe with it is like I was watching that, and when people are out there saying like this is like suddenly this is the favorite interaction people have ever had between Batman and Joker, I'm like,
no.
Why? Because they're talking about things that would have been way cooler if we'd seen them actually happen, as opposed to them talking about them happening. That's a weird take for people to have. And really, it comes down to people are like excited that Batman said the F word and that Joker made a reach around joke. And it's like that's like grow up, edgelords.
I have my thoughts put together now. Sorry about that. I got there's nothing like having like a dried out booger stuck in your nose while at the same time like you have this like serious itch on your back, and like you're just being distracted in way too many directions for how little sleep I got last night. My feelings and like where I was kind of going with this is I loved seeing what I saw there. I loved seeing the nightmare future again, because I thought that was such a wild and like different thing. Like Batman's got these like having his oracle moments in his dreams. That's just pretty wild. But what I really, really, really enjoyed about it was the this looming threat that is going on. The evil Superman, the anti-life equation, mind-controlled Superman that we're getting in that scene is. So, one thing I loved about it was you can immediately tell Batman just does not want to fight him, not just because he can't beat him, but because like you see like measures of compassion and caring You get like these really like veiled, subtle moments of Joker being like, how many times are you gonna do this before you realize that like you being alive is the problem? Which has like once again beating us over the head with like trying to be nuanced and subtle about it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's that. Now, I like it. I like that it's included because I find it really enjoyable that it was included because we are never going to get this, but we get something very, very fun and very, very cool. Once again, this was not built for like the future. This was not to like restore the Snyderverse. This was just everything that Snyder had left in him that he wanted to get out. It's out now. It's over. And I think that it's a wonderful bookend to his time with the DC universe. Let me rephrase that. It is an adequate ending to bookend his time with the DC universe. I'm looking forward to the current direction that DC is taking, and that Warner Brothers is taking with the DC universe and franchise. I am concerned about the future of Superman. But outside of that, I would say like if there had to be a wild and crazy ending, I'm glad that it was a cool future vision scene of the nightmare future.
What I want to circle back, like, why are you concerned about the future of Superman?
I love Henry Cavill as Superman.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't feel like Henry Cavill has been given a caliber of Superman film that he deserves.
That's fair. I would agree with that. I think
Yeah.
he, like, I will always remember at this point he did an interview a while back, basically like talking about how like when you get cast as Superman, you start like examining yourself and trying to live up to that character and trying to like, ask yourself, am I worthy of being Superman? And if the answer is no, you work to change that to a yes. Was basically like the sentiment behind it. I was like, that's a great approach, and that is like why. I mean, like I've been a fan of Henry Cavill going back to like The Count of Monte Cristo and Stardust, like him being like minor characters in any of those. So like it's been fun getting to see him like really blow up because of this role and stuff. And so yeah, I agree that like when I said earlier, like the closest I think that we got was Man of Steel of like a good version. Like so much of that is on Henry Cavill's shoulders, more so than anything Zack Snyder is putting into that movie. And I thought like
Zack Snyder didn't even direct it, so
for Man of Steel, yeah, he did. That was the beginning of the Snyderverse.
Oh, you're right. Sorry about that. I'm like Christopher Nolan directed it, but no, Christopher Nolan produced it.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. I will say, yeah, no, that's my concern is because we have such a great Superman, and we've never been able to see him do a great Superman film, and we are now at a point where if you like the only film I want to see out of the Snyderverse going forward, because I know we're still getting that Flash movie, aren't we?
Yeah, we're still supposedly getting Flashpoint. Shazam 2 is still coming. I mean, like some of these, it's like, do you consider these Snyderverse? Even like they exist in the same universe, but are they Snyderverse? Yeah. But yeah, Shazam 2, Black Adam, and Flash are the and like Suicide Squad 2, of course, the Suicide Squad is right around the corner.
Yeah, that's true. So we are still in the universe. We are now at a point in time where we could have a really, really good Superman film starring Henry Cavill. Where we don't need to do the origin story anymore. We don't need to like pull this in anymore. We can just do a solid, like, because I feel like every telling of a cool, like, no matter what, the film that people always draw themselves to is like the origin. And the last time we got somebody willing to play in the Superman universe was Superman Returns, which in itself is not a very good movie. Once again, has a great Superman.
Mm-hmm. Brandon Routh.
Well, Brandon Routh was a great Superman who was done dirty by the fact that, like, the film sucked.
Yeah.
It's crazy because they could.
It was a very interesting approach doing
Yeah,
like
as
a
a as
this
like
this is a continuation of the 78 Superman,
mhm.
but with a different actor and omitting like I want to say it like took place after Superman 2 basically. So it's like an Elseworlds alternate timeline story of like
Mhm.
branching paths. Um,
Yeah.
and you also have just a ton of shitty people that we didn't know were shitty at the time, but or we kind of knew were shitty at the time, like surrounding that because what you have is Bryan Singer I think was involved with that, right?
Yeah, yeah, Bryan Singer. Well, Bryan
And
Singer,
Kevin
we're like
Spacey.
we were all weirded out by Bryan Singer, but at the same time, we were all like, well, are we just being homophobic because he's bisexual? And like, so we all like kind of gave it a pass, and it turns out no, he was a total creep.
That's what I'm
And then
saying.
it turns out
Like
Kevin, yeah,
we didn't really know he was as shitty as he was at the time. Is what I'm
yeah,
saying.
we just kind of knew that he was like not that great of a director, because of the X-Men films.
Yeah.
Um, and then Kevin Spacey, like we had no idea he was a total monster. Um, but yeah, so like I look at that and I think to myself, here's a great example of like an interim non-introductory Superman story that just I feel like I'm afraid people are just too afraid of doing a original telling of Superman, and I think that because of where the Snyderverse is at, you could easily do we talked about it a little bit last night. Um, like Superman is originally a hero of the working class.
Hmm.
He is the anti-billionaire. He is the boy from the farm who moved to the city who works a job. Like you could definitely do a very interesting film that is Superman's dealing with the fact that he's been dead for a while, and people have known that he's been dead, and so he has to come up with an excuse as to why he's not dead. And like as Clark Kent, like explain to people like what was the situation. Like you could do something with that that's really cool. You have the fact that like he and Lois are expecting, and so it's like the jitters and worries and concerns of fatherhood. Like he has had two fathers who one literally created him to be a messiah, and the other saw that future for him and wanted him to have a more normal life, but at the same time understood that someday he would have to come into this destiny of his. And so it's grappling with like he did not have the two greatest fathers in the world, and it's like trying to figure out like where's the balance. Like I'm having a kid, like what am I supposed to do about this? And like you could have him grappling with these personal issues while at the same time dealing with an enemy he can't just punch harder. Give us a Lex Luthor or give us another villain who plays these games with Superman that he can't punch to win. Because the moment he uses violence or he punches to win, he loses. Like, give us a situation like that. I would love to see that for Henry Cavill Superman, because I think Henry Cavill Superman is at its best when he is being contemplative. There's moments in Man of Steel where when he's trying to like work his way through, like after he has introduced himself to the military and they're interrogating him and he's being interviewed by Lois, and he has these moments of quiet contemplation. And I will never forget the scene where she asked, why do you have why is there this giant S on your chest?
Hmm.
And everybody goes, well, and then he says this. It's like, well, in that scene, he actually takes a moment, looks down at it, closes his eyes, and then he gives a little smile, and he says, like, from where I come from, it's a symbol of hope. Or it means hope.
Hmm.
It's that moment that is transformative of it being a cute, fun line to a very pivotal moment for this character. And Henry Cavill's so good at those moments when he is looking at Lois, and Lois is in the cornfield in this film, and Lois is looking at him. He's doing his cornfield Jesus moment for Snyder,
Hmm.
with the sun behind him and everything. Uh, flannel corn husker Jesus. You have Lois coming out, and his eyes drop just to the corner of the screen, and he goes, "So I take that's a yes," and smiles, and it's like these moments that are just so that quiet moment of contemplation as he like looks at that ring and makes a decision to say something about it. These are the moments that I love about his Superman, where it's not the hands like fists on his hips.
Mm-hmm.
I'm about truth, justice, and the American way. It's this much more contemplative human being who is feeling the weight of his burden and getting that experience out of Man of Steel and a little bit of that in Batman v Superman, where he's trying to, deal with like there's too much going on in that film alone. We do not have time to get into it.
I
but,
mean, like his humanity is always like his most interesting aspect. Obviously,
Yeah.
given that he is like that is inherently like a contradiction. And like as I was like rewatching,
Yeah.
like when in that scene, Martha shows up to kind of before he makes the decision to go off. Like I'm immediately flashing back to the core idea of the Martha scene in Batman v Superman is a good idea in that it is an appeal to Superman's humanity. It is just executed in the dumbest possible way. And
Well,
that is so much of what those
not
moments are.
Superman's humanity, it's Batman's humanity.
I
He
mean,
says,
like,
"How do you know that name?"
but it is establishing. It's yes, it's not an appeal to Superman's, but it is
An establishment of his
establishing
humanity.
Superman's humanity to Batman is what I need to
Yes,
say.
exactly. Mhm.
And it is the
Yeah,
dumbest possible
100%.
execution because
Yep.
like if I'm being threatened, I'm not going to scream save Sherry because he's not going to have a fucking clue who Sherry is and that Sherry is my mother. So like that is just always the core of my issue with that sequence is just it is just the dumbest possible like way of showing that moment.
It is, but as a comic book fan, how old was I when that came out? Like 26, 27? As a comic book fan of like 25 plus years, I never once put together that both their names were Martha.
I mean, I hadn't either, but it's also they haven't always been like it was retconned in some recent version that they were both named Martha. So it's like it wasn't something that like got established. And also like we never are hugely introduced to Martha and Thomas Wayne. Like they're pretty much always just there to be killed at the beginning of Batman's story.
Yeah.
Like we never spend a ton of time with them to introduce them. Like we know Martha Kent way more, I would say, than we know
100%, yeah.
than we know because she exists in a in a modern time frame. But anyway, that's just my like the bringing it all around to this is like
Oh my gosh, sorry. That just reminded
me.
me that Gia Harris, friend of ours, but also like fiance to Tim Geddes of Kind of Funny. She was shocked that Batman never knew Batman's parents were killed,
Mm-hmm.
and so her shock when she goes, oh, she can't believe that his parents died in front of him.
Yeah. It's there's like there are nuggets of great ideas across these films and Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League included, and I just think the execution of them fails on many levels for me.
Oh yeah, totally.
And so that's
totally.
that's where ultimately like I come down because again, like I mean we touched on at least one of them already in the Flash sequence. Like it's a great idea, just execution is awkward and clumsy in the like the over romanticization of that relationship. Another one that I would say like the introduction of Cyborg and specifically Cyborg's decision to help this one struggling nurse.
Yeah, that's a weird scene.
Is great in idea, and it does a great job of like establishing this is who Cyborg is, but it goes on way too long. It shows us way too many beats of that character that we're never going to see again. It shows us way too many beats of their life that like we just didn't like. We could have seen it in half the time, and so it's just a weird thing of like okay, so Cyborg has gone out of his way to like give this woman an extra $100,000. Cool. What's he doing for the rest of the world that is suffering in the exact same way this lady is suffering?
That is a bigger question.
And especially seeing it in a post-pandemic or like in a mid-pandemic even era where like obviously originally this wouldn't have been, after we had record numbers of employment and stuff, but like seeing it now it's like
death,
it's like that's a real like awkward thing to see.
It's
in
super
this.
awkward. It's
So,
a weird scene. Like up until the moment he gives her the $1,000, him just like being able to or like when he's looking through like her life and her file.
Mm-hmm.
At first, I thought he was looking at a bunch of different people, and then I realized no, he's just looking at this one woman, and it's just weird, and it's kind of like it's super just not well established. Like you said, we never see her again.
And then like the blend from like when we're seeing this in like cyberspace versus when he's out there in like the real world. Like the first time I watched it, I just thought it was all in cyberspace. He's seeing this all happen through like security camera footage or whatever. But like no, you go and watch, and like after she gets the money from the ATM, he's standing there and he walks, and people react to him walking away. It's like Oh, so he was just like hovering over her to see her like get that money? That's very awkward, very weird. And
well, my interpretation of that scene was he's standing out there looking at her and then peers through all of her history.
Yeah,
which is even creepier.
Yeah. So like there's elements like that are just like mind-blowingly like this is just a very weird approach to an interesting nugget of an idea. That just ends up falling flat. I mean, for me, like, as much as I think Cyborg gets a much better shake this time around, I still think, like, when he gets introduced and when we see him in flashback and stuff like that, like, I found myself thinking, like, I mean, he was kind of always a robot. Like, even pre-Cyborg, he's, like, this cold, emotionless person that he then spends the rest of the movie being, and like it's blamed on him now being mostly robot or something, like mostly cyborg. But like seeing him and his anger towards his dad and just kind of like his resistance to that. I mean, let alone the and the kind of funny guys made fun of it too, but the idea of like in order to establish his character, the principal basically saying like he can't just go in and hack, his fellow students' grades or whatever, and the mom saying like, she suffered this unimaginable crime. What did you do? And it's like that doesn't excuse he can't like still go and commit crime to like that. It's just like a like.
He stole. What was it? Like $10,000,
$100,000 for that lady.
He stole he stole $100,000. So granted, let's be real here. Money is intrinsically fake and not real.
So yeah, and like I don't see him as stealing $100,000 so much as he created $100,000 out of thin air, basically, because he can do that because the markets are all completely fictionalized. It's not money coming out of somebody else's account and going into hers. It's just we literally see his manifestation of like he takes the pile of money and makes it bigger. So like it's not like seeping away from other accounts.
How badly did he hurt inflation in that world by just creating $100,000 out of nowhere?
I mean, in a multi-trillion, quadrillion-dollar market, I can't imagine it makes that much of a dent. So, yeah, it's like if it did expand to like a wider net of things, sure, then he could absolutely, and we see that like again, we see a weird visual manifestation of that with the bear and the bull fighting of like you can control markets to your will, which is another element that again kind of funny touched on, but the idea that like we don't see him learning and developing his powers. We hear his dad telling him all these things he can do, and it's like, how would you know what those powers are at all? Like what? Like you.
Also, it's way dangerous just telling somebody, yeah, you can manipulate the stock market.
Let
there
alone
are ramifications to that.
You
man.
could launch every nuclear missile with a thought. Like that's a bigger one, I would say. But yeah, so like,
is it wrong that I thought that was going to come back up when it's like we got to take down this base? How are we going to take it down? Don't worry. I got it. Since the shield absorbs radiation.
Yeah, I mean, like like that whole thing also was like, okay, this shield is built up as a big thing, but Batman can just like blow it up. It's like that seems like why set it up as such an indomitable threat if it's going to be that easy to destroy? Just seemed like a weird. Like there were a lot of weird choices in this thing, and that's like at the end of the day, that's kind of like the crux of Zack Snyder's Justice League. There were a lot of weird choices here.
A lot of weird choices. I liked a lot of the weird choices, but they were still very, very weird choices.
Yeah. Do you have any final thoughts you want to share before we wrap up here on Zack Snyder's Justice League? Do you have any interest at all in seeing the like Snyder restore the Snyderverse any like in any form? Like I saw Paris Lily out there kind of saying like it'd be really cool if they did what would have been Justice League 2 and 3 as an animated series on HBO Max or something like that. Is that something that interests you at all, or are you just ready to kind of put
No,
this to bed and move on?
I'm ready to just put it to bed and move on. My biggest thing I already voiced was my concern about where to go with Superman from here. Having him, what his future is, Henry Cavill's future as Superman, I'm very interested in that, and I would very much like to see Henry Cavill reprise that role in a solo film going forward. Since we're already going, like, the thing is, we're already, like, the Snyderverse is continuing.
I mean,
like, we have Flashpoint, we have the Suicide Squad.
Flashpoint is the interesting thing because Flashpoint could basically rewrite everything. Like when we already have the reports of like Michael Keaton returning as Batman theoretically in Flashpoint.
As Old Man Batman? Oh, that'd be so sick.
So like you can already and even in the CW when CW did Flashpoint, like they crossed the streams and had Ezra Miller meet Grant Gustin. So
which was awesome. That was an awesome moment.
So like Flashpoint can completely embrace the multiverse, and so you could still have in the same way that MCU seems to be fully embracing the Spider-Verse or the multiverse here with all the reports of the old Spider-Man coming back for Spider-Man No Way Home, right? I think that's the name of it.
Yep. It is.
So like I think while you were fatigued by superhero movies, which we talked about at the beginning of this episode, like they have become so predominant and so like ingrained in the culture that like these what would have been incredibly complex things to discuss and broach are now kind of commonplace, thanks to all of the heavy lifting that the MCU and even the DCEU have done in the recent years. So like we can get into these multiverse stories, and you could see a new Superman movie in a different non-Zack Snyder universe, but it is still Henry Cavill embodying that figure and that character, and that I like.
Sure,
that'd be cool. I really love the Shazam movie. That is probably
I'm a big fan of the Shazam movie as well. I'm very excited for Black Adam and Shazam too.
Yeah, of like the DC films, like that is up there and among the top of my favorites, and I love the little tease at the end that like is that Superman kind of coming and sitting down with Shazam at lunch. So even there, I would love to see Henry Cavill show up in Shazam or like have a team up between those two characters. It'll be really interesting to see, I guess where we go forward, and because I do think it will continue to move away from the Snyderverse ideals, but what you got?
Up until they do like Flashpoint and the reset stuff, like it'd be actually really cool if like you would just have like Superman or Wonder Woman or some of these characters just kind of drop in on other films, and it's just like, oh yeah, hey, you're that person. It's like, yep, and it's like, well, it's the Justice League.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You don't need it. Like, here's an idea. You don't need a Justice League 2 or 3 film. You can just have the Justice League be the ever-present Justice League helping out other heroes.
Yeah.
You could totally do that. I could totally see that being a really cool idea. As far as an animated series, I don't know. I don't think we need to see the finish of Zack Snyder's vision. I feel like we got what we needed from it here. Going forward, we'll see what happens, but I feel like we're not going to say goodbye to the Snyderverse just yet. So, people out there, hold your horses. Don't go,
I mean, like,
don't go burning bridges. But
for me, the thing is, like, I mean, I don't think it makes financial sense for Warner Brothers to do it. I think, like,
nope.
Even this whole thing, like, I would be very curious, and I don't think it paid off in terms of like HBO Max subscriptions. I don't think you saw a huge influx, especially if the reports that are coming out of like Justice League didn't have as many views as Wonder Woman did. Wonder Woman 84 did.
Yep.
Admittedly, like you had Wonder Woman 84 come out, significantly less time investment, but also it came out on like Christmas Day versus Zack Snyder's Justice League, which to the common person that isn't ingrained in like the release the Snyder Cut stuff, are they just kind of like, are they recognizing what that difference is, what that means, all that stuff? So like I saw an article, I want to say it was like an IGN thing, basically posting like restore the Snyderverse has been like, that hashtag has been tweeted like a million times, and I started to kind of draft up a tweet before I was like, I don't even want to like dive into this
You got
because
to get into that.
it's
Nope,
going to
stay out of that.
draw people that I don't want to engage with on Twitter or whatever. But like
Yep.
the sentiment was going to be, okay, let's assume that every one of those 1 million tweets is an individual unique person that's going to see the movie even twice. Like not counting the fact that probably a lot of those tweets are bot tweets and just kind of like catching it, like
Yeah.
jumping on hashtags that are
Or how many
popular
of the,
and trending and stuff
or
like
how
that.
many of them are news articles or people talking about the news article.
Yeah. So like, but let's assume that every one of those 1 million is going to be a diehard fan that goes see the movie twice. Let's even say 3 times. That is, let's say 15, 20. Let's round up to $20 a ticket. That's $60 million. You'll like, there's still a long way to go to get to the $300+ million that another Zack Snyder Justice League movie would cost, and that's just on the production side, let alone the marketing side. That's, you know, going to probably be another $300 million. Like I want to say the original Justice League was $300 million budget, and I think brought in like $600-700 million worldwide or something like that, and was largely considered a flop because of how much money had to be pumped into like making that and all that stuff. So like, I can't imagine, like, yes, there's a rabid diehard fan base of this, but they are a lot smaller than they think they are, and a lot of them, you know, how much of them are putting their money where their mouth is to really invest and support in that, and those are why Warner Brothers makes the decisions they make, is because they think there's, you know, money to be made behind it. And so the real thing to identify, like, if this was any good would be, did they see a huge uptick in HBO Max subscriptions this last month, coinciding with people watching Justice League? And I don't, like, if they had been, we would have seen reports about that already. And so the fact that we haven't probably doesn't bode well for the future of the Snyderverse. And people are going to be mad about that, and whatever. They'll be mad until the next director comes out and gets to take a stab at making a Superman movie. So
I will say this. You got the Snyder cut.
Yeah.
You got like, we all thought it was impossible. We all thought it would never happen. It cost him, $60+ million more to put it together. You got it. You won. Like you won. Like,
that's the problem, is they won. And so now they think that if they're loud enough, I mean, like, I have a significant issue with the studios in recent years bending to the will of internet mobs, going to looking at like Sonic, looking at this, even looking at
Sonic.
I mean,
Sonic,
like,
that was less of an internet mob and more of a
paid off
everyone reaction.
I mean, it paid off, but I still don't like the idea of like go with your original vision, or just have a better vision outright. I'm just not a fan of, like, just because of, like, the toxicity of internet mobs like that. I'm not a fan of them getting their way as much as they are in recent years. I mean, like, the culmination, I would argue, was like J.J. Abrams returning to Star Wars for Rise of Skywalker, and they made a Rise of Skywalker movie that nobody liked. People were so pushed back against Rian Johnson so hard, and again, a vocal minority of people pushed back against Rian Johnson so hard that, like, Disney and Star Wars became, like, reactionary to it, and we didn't end up getting, like, a good bit of closure to that story. I mean, it was a fine bit. I think when I scored it for that nerdy site, I think I scored it a 7. So I think I said it was a good movie, because it's not, like, egregiously terrible, but it's not the greatness that it could have been. Like, I would put Last Jedi myself in there in, like, a 9-10 kind of category, and so Rise of Skywalker ends up being a significant letdown. And the people that, like, hated Last Jedi still hate Rise of Skywalker. So like, they didn't like, win anybody over really on that. No. And so that's just, I just don't like. I don't like the power that like dicks on the internet think they're getting by these repeated wins that they've been getting. Is what I would say.
Yeah, I will say this. One, I don't think the reaction to Sonic was because of angry internet mobs. I think that was just when your design for your character becomes a enormous meme mocking it for looking terrible. Like from the get go, the moment it launched and everybody was like, "What is wrong with this?"
Mm-hmm.
Nobody liked it. Nobody thought it looked good.
Yeah.
And so the studio was just like, "Hey, our reaction to this beloved character is that it looks horrifying. We should fix it," and they did. I think that's different than where, and I agree with you on this because very much there was a portion of the you know release the Snyder Cut fandom that was toxic to the point where, like we mentioned it last night, there was a group of them that were previously sponsoring a panel that no longer was sponsoring a panel, and their name got left on it. And Zack Snyder took a moment to say, by the way, they are not affiliated with this panel. I know what they did. I know their misogyny and their bigot, and that is not okay, and that's not part of this. So I look at that and I think, sometimes we forget, and I mentioned it last night with his with the things around Zack Snyder being sometimes toxic or in the case of Frank Miller, ultra conservative right wing stuff. We forget that he's actually a decent human being who's really been called kind and wonderful, and people prefer him to Joss Whedon. So
yeah.
But to that point, I would say when in consideration for Star Wars, I agree. However, I think the greatest problem Star Wars had was we're going to have three different directors who are three very different kinds of directors, and there's nobody really taking a. Because even though
there
wasn't
a Kevin Feige-ness to it. I get
there was
that.
not a Kevin Feige. There was not a Kevin. There was not. But there also wasn't a. In the original trilogy, there was George Lucas still, who knew what the through line should be, knew what the themes were going to be throughout all three films, and even though he didn't direct the last two, he still accomplished that. And when you look back at the prequels, despite the numerous problems the prequels have, there is still that straight vision down the middle that they accomplish. And there's not that in the sequel trilogy, which is why I think the sequel trilogy, even considering how stellar I think two of those films are, they as a trilogy do not work for me. But but I digress to the point we're making, which is bullies shouldn't be able to win.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I'll end that.
Yeah.
It's bullies suck and they shouldn't win.
Yeah.
So.
And some of them think they did here with the Snyder Cut being released, and that's unfortunate.
Yep.
And so I just seeing the restore the Snyderverse thing. I'm just I hate you.
Nope.
I don't want
to need that.
I don't want to see any more of this. It's show me something better. Give me something better than the Snyderverse, because
we're technically not out of the Snyderverse yet.
I mean, yes, but these movies have at best been 8s, and so I would love to see just better DC movies. So yeah, don't feel like you're beholden to that one man's vision that I think again didn't necessarily set the version of events off on the right foot anyway.
Yeah.
Or at least on the most compelling foot for my personal taste, at least. But yeah, so that is going to do it for our look here at the Snyder Cut and all of the tangents around it that we've taken.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah, that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you, Cam, for joining me. We can go around the metaphorical table with any plugs. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot. Anything you want to give a shout out to, Cam?
Yeah, I'm streaming Mondays and Wednesdays from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. West Coast, Best Coast time right now. Pacific time. Mondays, I'm usually playing an MMO. That might be changing because it was just recently introduced this week into a new game. And so I might be playing that for a couple hours instead on Monday. We'll see. And Wednesday, I am playing Yakuza Kiwami in what was originally something called Weeb Wednesday, but is now being retuned into something different. So
cool. Yeah, I saw Work in Progress Wednesday? Was that?
Yep.
Okay.
Because if you're wondering why, if you watch the VOD from this past Wednesday at the very beginning, I explain everything.
Yeah.
So.
Just a quick heads up to you, by the way. Your go live notification still says like, "Hey, it's a test" or something like that. So.
Does it? Okay.
Yeah,
I'll need to
you might
fix
want to
that.
check that the next time you're getting set up. But yeah, go check out Cam, twitch.tv/RevCabot, just like his Twitter handle there. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. I will shout out this Tuesday, so tomorrow, if you're listening to this the day this goes live, Logan and I recorded the first chunk of what will probably be the entire game Let's Play series on It Takes Two, the new game from Hazelight Studios. So you can go check out us playing the first, I want to say like hour and a half of that will be going live this week. It's a fun little co-op game. It's certainly I think it is well worth all the buzz it's getting. And
Nice.
it's a cool, innovative thing. There were we had a ton of moments where like we're progressing through and we get stumped for about 5 seconds before we figure out what needs to happen. It was just a cool that's a really cool way of solving this puzzle that we need to do kind of thing. So yeah, check that out on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/thatnerdysite, coming to you this week. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. If you liked what you heard, once again, please rate, review, like, subscribe, maybe even consider supporting us over on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, where every patron gets early access to a monthly bonus episode of this very show. Thank you again for listening. As always, stay nerdy and be good to each other.